And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Tonight's weather showing high pressure moving in over the Aleutians and making for pretty dry conditions with light winds out that way. And gusty northwest winds and west winds here for the Alaska Peninsula, slowly diminishing and staying pretty windy along the southwest coast. Showers as this low develops, moves to near the mouth of Resurrection Bay here, so pretty good chance of showers or light rain across anywhere east and south of the Alaska range, with some showers up in the central interior associated with that trough there that kind of drops back down in toward the Yukon and Kuskokwim River area in the deltas. Otherwise, the southeast coast, as this weakening front presses eastward, look for some periods of light rain all along the North Gulf Coast on down toward Dixon Entrance. And then for tomorrow, southwest flow here keeps it pretty showery over the southeast coast, wet and unsettled for the North Gulf Coast into the Copper River Basin. Showers scattering out with maybe a few sunbreaks here over south central Alaska and the central interior of the state. A little more clouds and shower activity persisting there up over the eastern areas. Starting to see some sunshine here as high pressure weakly ridges northward here in that area, and that ahead of a next system moving out of the Russian Far East there. Otherwise, trough with some moisture here may spread some light rain, probably not reaching St. Paul, St. George area until tomorrow evening early. And the next system there coming onto the edge of the chart here as this high kind of slides to the east. It'll be dry for the central Aleutians, and winds slowly diminishing for the Alaska Peninsula and coming down noticeably for the southwest coast. But look for some sunshine with gusty northwest winds or west northwest winds there for Kodiak Island. That'll help clear it out and keep it dry there. And then going on to Wednesday, you'll see this system up here in the north slides eastward, bringing rain to the Arctic coast, North Slope, Western Brooks Range area. High pressure ridging into the interior here, centered south of the Alaska Peninsula, producing mostly clear skies here for Bristol Bay up into the Kuskokwim Valley, with partly to mostly sunny skies right into the central interior, becoming mostly cloudy with showers lingering here over the east side. Mostly sunny, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, maybe Prince William Sound, definitely Kodiak Island with pretty nice temperatures there, and showers mostly over the northern and southeast coast. And for lows tonight, or I'm sorry, for the coastal wind forecast, southwest at 15 knots here for the south coast, central coast, southwest 15 to 20 knots, and 10 to 15 knot west to south winds on the north coast. Small craft advisories tomorrow for Lynn Canal, south winds 25 knots with 5-foot seas, and south winds at 20 knots for both Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait at 20 knots. And then for the day on Wednesday, southeast winds 15 knots, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, all of the inside channels here with seas at about 3 feet. Not much different out along the coast. In the south, south to southwest winds at 15 knots, southeast 15 on the central coast, even lighter up on the north coast, mostly out of the east at 10 knots. Prince William Sound, east winds 10 knots for the day Tuesday. Light variable winds for the North Gulf Coast, and variable winds 10 to 15 knots for Cook Inlet, but northwest 30-knot winds for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands with 6 to 8-foot seas. And moving on to the outlook for Wednesday, we'll see small craft advisories continue for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, but down to west at 25 knots. West winds at 10 knots here for Cook Inlet, seas 2 to 3 feet. Light variable winds continue for the North Gulf Coast and now include Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island tomorrow, small craft advisories, west winds 25 knots. Small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula for west to northwest winds 25 to 30 knots. And Bristol Bay, winds northwest 30 knots with 10-foot seas. Outlook for Wednesday, Kodiak Island, west winds at 20 knots with 3 to 5-foot seas. Lighter winds now for the peninsula here, west-northwest at 15 knots, and winds for Bristol Bay coming down to 20 knots, still out of the west. For the eastern Aleutians, west-northwest winds 15 to 20 knots tomorrow, southwest at 10 knots for Adak and Atka. And for the western Aleutians, mostly south winds at 15 to 20 knots. And for Wednesday, a pretty good chance of small craft advisories for the western Aleutians here, looking at winds at 30 knots from the southwest, seas anywhere from 9 to 11 feet. Adak and Atka, southwest at 20 knots. Eastern Aleutians, south to southwest winds at 15 to 20 knots. For the southwest coast, Kuskokwim Delta coast, looking at northwest winds, 25 knots there. And then west at 20 for the Yukon Delta coast, west 15 St. Lawrence Island. But small craft advisories for Norton Sound, winds northwest 25 knots, west at 15 for the Pribilof Islands, and southwest 20 for St. Matthew Island. And for Wednesday, for the Pribilof, south winds 15 knots, seas 5 feet, south at 20 for the St. Matthew Island area, northern Bering Sea. And for the southwest coast, southwest winds 20 to 25 knots. Southwest winds 20 knots, St. Lawrence Island on into Norton Sound. And for the Chukchi Sea tomorrow, north winds 10 to 25 knots, western Arctic coast, northeast at 10 knots. Northeast winds also at 10 knots for the central Arctic coast, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, northeast winds at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. And for Wednesday on the east side here, east-southeast winds 10 to 15 knots, southeast at 20 on the central coast, southwest at 20 knots for the western Arctic coast, and south to southwest winds at 20 to 25 knots there for the Chukchi Sea.